Well, you know what? Let me get a little bit into you. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I've known you, but we've, you know what I mean, we've encountered each other a bunch of times, whatever. Always said hello. It's always been respectful, you know what I mean, quick things or whatnot. Followed you on social media. You disappeared.
I did.
You disappeared. Then you came back. But then prior to you coming, well, for me noticing you back on social media, I'd seen you about on things. So I saw you, there was something that you did with Krept and Cohen, and I'm not sure exactly. I think it might have had something to do with the foundation that they had.
That's right.
And then just some other bits and pieces or whatnot. First, I'd like to know, like, where did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Northwest London.
Yeah.
So funny enough, there's a lot of people who've been on this show that I kind of grew up with. You had Rashid on here not too long ago. And he's somebody that I very much consider as kind of growing up within the same neighbourhood.
Raps?
No.
Oh.
No, not Raps. So I went to school in Willesden.
Yeah.
In Willesden, near Cardiff and Hensley, where a lot of, you know, I guess people around Northwest London, I guess, associated. So yeah, that's where I grew up.
And did you go through the academic route of like school, college?
Yeah, I did,
university?
but I did. I went through that stage. Went to sixth form, went to university, went to Brunel.
What did you study?
I did social science and law, media, communications.
Social science.
Yeah, so school of social science.
Okay.
So
That sounded like
media.
around six separate.
No.
Bet.
So that's school of social science, media, and communications.
Okay.
I always wanted to be a presenter. I always wanted to be, you know, in communications. I used to do public speaking when I was younger.
Yeah.
I used to write speeches. I loved drama. I loved kind of expressing myself. So that's what I always wanted to do. I had a very short stint at the BBC, working for Newsround. This is many moons ago.
Yeah.
And I very quickly realised that actually I wanted something that was a lot more factual. And then the problem you've got with the media or you know, all these outlets is that a lot of it was all down to opinions. What I do for a living now, opinions and subjectivity is removed. It's all about facts and numbers and figures. And clearly there's a human element to it. But I very quickly realised that's not what I wanted to do. And so I got into banking. And this was, you know, at the...
How?
Just
like
before,
when you say
before
you
the
got
crunch.
into banking, like how do you?
So I knew a guy when I was growing up who worked in a branch. Okay, so when I was at school, my very first job was Toys R Us. Right? That was my very first job, and I loved it.
Mine was Marks and Spencer.
Yeah, I worked, and now it's gone bankrupt. So maybe it must have been something I did. But I worked in the multimedia bit, and you know, I remember very vividly. If you ever went to it in Brent Cross, the big Toys R Us that used to be there.
Yeah.
And in the multimedia bit, I was playing games. You know, we were there when the PS3 came out, when the Nintendo Wii came out. That was when I was working there, right? So, and I remember at the end of my shift every day, the manager would always say, "You know what, Franklin, you haven't done enough, and so take the broom and, you know, go and sweep around," because somebody had to sweep the store every day, right, before you close. And because I was at school, I did an evening shift, meaning that duty normally fell on me. And I remember just walking around with that broom and just thinking, I wonder what everybody walking past me thinks of me. Because here I am, a young guy working at Toys R Us with a broom in my hand at, you know, 9:30, almost 10 p.m, sweeping. I always wondered, how does that look? How are people perceiving me when they walk past? Do they really think that this is all I'm ever going to be? Or do they understand, as I understand it, that this is just the means of getting through, you know, my education and actually making some money, understanding all of that?
Did it matter to you?
No. It didn't matter how it's perceived, but I always wondered because, you know, as you're growing up and in your daily lives, you walk around, you see people, and you make a perception of that person. Rightly or wrongly, you judge people. You think,
of course.
You never see beyond what they're doing because you think that's all they're there for. But I just remember always playing that back in my mind and thinking, right, okay, I want to do something with myself that helps other people, right? I always had this thing about trying to make a change, and it's not always immediately obvious because, you know, I was away for 2 years, 2.5 years from social media, whatever. I wasn't sleeping for 2.5 years. You know, I was very active and very much engaged in, you know, my daily business and what I do, very active. But I want to help make a change. So that's my mentality when I was there. And there was a guy that I knew who worked in a bank, who, you know, this was a branch bank at that time. In those days, if he worked in a bank, he was a big deal, you know, because everybody else I knew worked at Carphone Warehouse or JD or Asda or Sainsbury's. So, but this guy worked in a bank, and I thought, you know what, I respect this guy because people respect him, right? Quite frankly, people go into the bank, and when you're in a bank, you know, whoever you are, you get into a bank and start feeling nervous. You haven't done anything, but just being in that environment with money, and you start kind of looking around thinking, oh gosh, right, is there anything left in that bank account?
That's very true,
right? You start walking around thinking.
My early days of banking, when I was in Halifax, where it was stress for me sometimes. I didn't know what was going on in there. I felt like I was getting held hostage.
It's a nervous experience.
Going to close it.
It's a nervous experience. Because it's, as I said, money is something that people don't naturally want to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about how much they earn or whatever else. But I really respected this guy, and I remember just one day sitting down thinking, let me look at jobs online. This is whilst I was at university, thinking, let me look at jobs online, and have a look at banking, right, as a career, and think about what I want to do. And then I had an opportunity to go to an interview at one of these high street banks, and I went in, and it turns out that the actual interview I went for was for a private bank and not for a high street bank. Now, I knew nothing about private banks. I was a young guy. I had no clue. But what was important was the way that I handled that interview and myself in that situation. I'm the sort of person that I don't get easily intimidated by situations, right? Because the reality is, no matter how rich you are, someone's always richer than you. No matter how hench you are, someone's always hencher than you, right? But nobody knows it all. And so I very much believe in equality. And you know what? All of us in this room are equal. We can all equally contribute to something in this life or the other. So I went into that interview and I just thought to myself, you know what? Whatever happens, I'm going to leave the best of myself in this room. I'm so underprepared because I had no clue I was coming into a private bank, right? But there I was anyway. And what was I going to do? Was I going to run, or was I going to make excuses for my lack of preparation, not knowing where I was going into? But anyway, I got the job. And this was just before the credit crunch. So, this is when the world was just about to go upside down. So, over 10 years ago. And I remember walking into this job and thinking, wow, I'm going to use my youth as my biggest advantage here, because I was young, I was hungry, I was driven, I was self-motivated. And there were a lot of people around me who'd been in the financial industry for, centuries or whatever, who were very comfortable. And so everything that came up, I questioned. Everything that was given to me, I did to the best of my ability. And I always have this thing that you never know who's watching. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, do it to the best of your ability, because the moment you walk away, that could be the opening of something huge. So everything they gave me to do, I did the best of my ability.
What did your first day, do you remember what your first day looked like?
So my first day, it was pretty daunting, right? It was pretty daunting because there was this guy from, this young boy from Northwest London walking into a private bank and kind of looking around and thinking, one, there's nobody here that looks like me. There's nobody here that even resembles or in a similar demographic. What have I got myself into? But I thrived off that. I looked at that and I thought, you know what, maybe this is the problem of the world, that nobody dares enough to actually walk into a situation like this and make the best of it.
Of course.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think that is an inspiring thing as well, because I think sometimes what some people can do is go into a situation like that and instantly feel like a victim, and that they're out of place, and there's nobody that looks like me, so maybe I don't deserve to be there. But you do deserve to be there, and you can use that to your benefit in order to strive to get to that next thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So it's exactly that. I think it's definitely changed in my over 10 years or so I've been in private banking. It's changed for sure, but in those days, very much so, you walk into a room and I was, the only one that looked like me. And that could either be a problem or it could be your motivation to actually think, do you know what, let me do the best that I can. Not to say that we always have to overcompensate, but actually I want to be proud of myself, right? I'm doing this for me. I think very early on in my career, that's one thing that I hung on to. The fact that I wasn't doing it for anybody else. No manager or managing director or CEO can make me do these things. I wanted to do it for me. So when someone sets me a target, I set myself a target, right? And I achieve my target, which is always above and beyond yours.
I hear you.
Because I want to do it for me and not you. Right? Because then it's almost as if you have a restriction to my capabilities. Well, not so. I have the restrictions to my capabilities, right? So that's really how, I that was my mentality when I got in. And I learned the very basics of banking, standing orders, direct debits.
What is private banking?
Great question.
So private banking, I guess, is in today's world an option for people who are perhaps maybe affluent and above. So people who earn in the hundreds of £1,000s or so, or have a bit more of a complex financial requirement than the average person. Most private banks, and there are a few now, some here nationally, some globally, will all have their requirements. Some will say that in order to bank with us, you need to have a minimum earning of £300,000 a year. Or in order to bank with us, you need to borrow £2 million or have £3 million invested with us to bank with us. So private banking really, I guess, is designed for those who are in that high flyers.
Why? Like, why? Say a bank says, okay, in order for you to open up an account with us, you have to have £300,000.
Yeah.
Why? Does it come with certain services and stuff? Because
Correct.
from what I see, maybe I could be wrong.
Yeah.
From what I see is, I have a 300 bags or whatever, I put that in my account or whatever, and then now I have access to somebody like you who then is able to show me, all right, cool, this is what I know, you got your money here, just to let you know, if you want, you can do this, you could do that. Or am I right in that thinking?
Correct. That's exactly that. So when we going back to your initial point that you made about, I guess it has something to do with class, but I really want to talk about entrepreneurism later on, which really kind of, tips it over on its head. Yeah. But it is about having that financial coach. When you're in private banking, it's more than just a checking account, and you're more than just the name in the system or the database. It's very much about the value they can add to your wealth, right? So it's, money attracts money. Very true. It's about, how do I help you to grow your ambitions, your goals, your financial goals? How do I aid you to do that? And that's what private banking is about. And that's what, I think there's lots of different tiers. You might have things like premier banking or something like that, or private accounts or whatever. There are various tiers, but there are, the elite tiers where, if you want to enter that club almost, you need to be in the millions in order to benefit from their services. And it's intentionally done so. Compare it to brands. You can survive by wearing Primark. Equally, you can survive by wearing Louis Vuitton. What makes one person go for one over the other, right? It's all about their circumstances and, what it is that they like about this brand rather than that brand. And if you can't afford that, then clearly your default is everything that's in between here and there. Whereas if that's where you find yourself in life and you want that enhanced relationship management and, if you like, complex, sophisticated structures to your wealth, then you gravitate towards the private banking. But the reality is, I've seen the transition from old money to new money, right? And old money for me is the inherited money that's passed on from generations, estates, land, agriculture, etc. Or people who just always had wealth in their family tree. But then there's new money, which is all the entrepreneurs, the fintechs, the people who are now becoming, if you like, the controllers of society, who are overnight millionaires. Cryptocurrency entrepreneurs, it's the new money really now is where a lot of things are happening now. So believe it or not, most of these institutions are thinking, right, how do we prepare ourselves to make sure we can capture this new market? Because that is where the future's heading, right? Artificial intelligence and everything else doesn't really care too much about old money. It's about new money, right? And I had a debate with someone not too long ago about the fact that in today's world, anybody can make it given the right set of circumstances. Anybody can make it, because I've seen it with my very own eyes, people coming from nothing or 9 to 5 building multi-million turnover companies, right, and being worth a lot of money. And that's all purely based on ideas and contacts and accessibility, which 10, 15, 20 years ago was very difficult to come by. It was all about who you knew, etc. Now you can have a product, you can have a talent, put it out there, and the world will consume it, and all of a sudden now these old institutions want to mess with you because you're the go-to. So the whole dynamics of our economy has changed. It's absolutely changed. And if you look at where we are right now, there are still about 6.7 million people who are deemed economically inactive, meaning they're not working, they're not looking for a job, but they're kind of floating around somewhere. They're floating around somewhere. So we've got a massive population. Unemployment at the moment is low, which is great, meaning a lot of people are working. But I feel enterprise and entrepreneurship is really changing the dynamics of the world we live in now. And that's where the new money is.
Do you want to ask anything?
I'm not sure. Not yet.
All right. So you was working at a private bank.
Yeah.
Is it then for you to build up a portfolio of clients?
Yeah.
Or do they start you off with giving you a couple of clients?
Yeah.
And what do you do? I mean, what type of conversations do you have with them?
So I love the conversations I have. So, I mean, I guess for the record, I look after entrepreneurs. So when I was on social media before, I had a very heavy influence around entrepreneurship, and I used to do these networking events all aimed at bringing young entrepreneurs together, because I got to a stage in my life where I knew so much about the benefits of having somebody to tell you the steps to take, whereas I knew people who were trying to take those steps and had nobody to tell them. So for me, I wanted to merge the two together, and that was really the whole birth of this urban financer thing, was to say that, look, I've come from an urban environment, right? I know the hunger and the talent and the passion of the people here, but actually now I professionally operate in a totally different part of society, and I've learned so much. How is it that I can merge the two together? Yeah. And that's how Urban Financer came about. Yeah. It wasn't set out to become Instagram famous or anything like that. No. And in fact, for the 2.5 years that I went off, I needed to work on the work I had to do, right? Because a lot of the time you can spend so much time talking about what you're doing to people, etc., and not enough time doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, not enough time doing it. Yeah. So I just had to go and cement a few things and actually work on the graft and just kind of get those things done. But my sort of ambition really was figuring out just to merge it together. It's not easily done, because as I said, you've got this population here and that population there, and the population here are in so many different stages that you can't just wake up one day and say, right, everybody, I'm going to take you on this journey. And, Krept and Conan, as you mentioned, with the PD Foundation, this was something that we came up with, a few years back when they were doing their Long Way Home album. And they were talking about, how do we leave a legacy beyond music? How do we do something that benefits the children of Croydon? Which is where they came from. And, you can always do handouts here and there, and that's nice. But actually, how do you change people's lives? Yeah. And you start with the foundation. You start with the people at the bottom. So no surprises, it's the foundation. It's literally the foundation of how do we start changing the upbringing of these people through schools, teaching them the craft and using people that they work with to deliver the sessions. That's really the USP. That we haven't brought in a bunch of supply teachers. They're using people like Critical and Nia, people they work with to deliver these sessions to the students. So they're getting it really from the horse's mouth. Yeah. But so for me, that is all about that enterprise. And I think, as an urban community, there's so much we could do. There's so much we could do.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that sometimes a lot of it does come down to just guidance as well. There's some people that are in predicaments of being able to make money, but not particularly knowing what they can do with it. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So are you still within private banking?
I'm still in private banking. I still work with entrepreneurs. Okay. And that's really my main focus, entrepreneurs. Yeah. Okay. And so that's what I do. So when it comes to business and understanding the economy, so you mentioned there, Ellen, about how difficult it is for entrepreneurs to get mortgages because the way that they take their income, etc. I deal with that every day. So when you just mentioned, I thought, surprise.
So I take it that you sometimes get phone calls at all hours of the day and night. Why does this not happen?
I get phone calls all hours of the day.
What would you say? I mean, obviously, and I know some stuff is confidential, but what would you say are the type of conversations you have when your phone rings at 9 o'clock in the evening or 10 o'clock at night? What are the type of conversations you're having?
It really depends on what the deal or the transaction is. So in reality, all my clients are successful in what they do, extremely successful. However, even the people we idolize never stop working, right? All the world athletes or whatever, they don't ever stop until they want to retire. They keep working even when they're at their peak. Same thing for my clients. They're always working, trying to improve their circumstances. And a lot of the time, it's trying to make a particular transaction happen. And it's up to my expertise and knowledge to understand how we can manipulate or present a case in order to get a bit of lending or to make something happen effectively. So a lot of what I do is structuring. It's always thinking about how do I present your situation in a manner that can be understood by any credit underwriter or whatever that can actually understand you as an entrepreneur. And so a lot of it is about that. And entrepreneurs don't sleep, which means that I don't get much sleep either. But yeah, so it's for me. I really see the shift. There's these guys, I don't know if you've come across them, Morts and More, who are tailors. And for me, that's incredible. They're in a market that's extremely competitive, but they're holding their ground and they're doing their thing. We've got the mass, we've got the scale in our urban community. We've got it, right? But it's just that we're too easily distracted. We're too easily distracted, right? Something happens that...
Why do you think that is? Like, where do you think that comes from? Do you think that is an inheritance thing which I don't necessarily believe, because I think that when I look, I don't know, maybe this is an individual thing, but when I just look at the first generation of people that came here, they were very, very hard working. And maybe this is a conversation for another day, but I was thinking about this even in terms of credit in housing and stuff like that. When the first generation came here, from my perspective, a lot of them was very hard working, whatnot, tried to lay foundations for the next generation, which but then after that, what happened is you had that party era where everyone was just all partying,
everyone's having a good time,
having a proper good time, and then also taking out houses and doing all of that stuff, but then defaulting on them and all of these type of things. And then now you've got this generation here that is also in somewhat bearing the brunt of an element of it, in a sense that now it's so difficult to get mortgage because the mortgage rates are so high because of all of the stuff that was going on.
Are they high?
From before?
3%?
No, so I think, as I said earlier on, I don't think mortgage rates in generally are high. We've seen the lowest Bank of England base rate for the longest period of time. It's started to creep back up because the economy is in a very fragile situation at the moment. But you're right, it feels as if we have the hangover from our parents' antics, and we're still kind of recovering from the hangover of that. And so you can look at your parents and say, why didn't you buy a house when they were going for 50 grand?
But to be fair, the argument then is 50 grand was a hell of a lot of money.
Exactly.
But I think there was the balance between
wages
and inflation. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you've got the prices of prices of houses are going all the way up, which is what I'm more meant about. Not the rates, but I'm more meant this. So it's like the houses are going all the way up, but the wages ain't particularly going up, which then makes it more difficult. Which is more the hangover element that I was talking about. Do you get me?
But I think that's definitely more an economical / political issue that we've got at the moment. But for sure, I think, when it comes to buying houses, maybe we should touch on that very quickly. I think a lot of people have this idea that they want to own a house irrespective of what they earn. The reality is the banks will look at you, of course, they'll look at your credit history, etc. But also every bank will have their own metric of assessing how much they can lend you as an individual, right? So normally it might be 5 times loan to income ratio, it might be 5.5, it might be whatever. So if you're thinking about buying a house, have a look at how much you're earning. A lot of the time you can pair up with a brother or sister or a relative or whatever, because then you've got double the income to multiply, right? They look at the applicant's income jointly, if it's a joint application, and they'll multiply that by 4.5 or 5 or 6 or whatever the case may be. So there is actually ways of saying, if you don't want to buy a house and you haven't got enough income, but you could afford the repayments, etc., and you've got somebody else in your family who has a good level of income as well, who doesn't own a property, have that conversation. And this is what I meant earlier on about speaking to your family and friends and understanding, okay, what is it we can do jointly together as a venture, to the point where in a couple of years' time I might be able to step away from this property and start again and buy my own or whatever. So there are various ways of looking at it.
Can I ask you, in your career so far, have you had a perfect failure? And what I mean by that is the thing that you may have failed at within your line of work, or maybe even seen somebody fail at, with your clients, but ultimately gained you or your client huge value in the end.
So I think as experience, the biggest challenge I've had in my career is what I term death by association. What that simply means is, and again, this applies very heavily to popular culture, never assume that you're a millionaire because you're hanging around with millionaires, right? Never assume that your pockets are as deep as the associates you have. You can't be rich by association unless you're in their will, or you're getting a share of that company, or you're getting the same paycheck they're getting. Don't make that mistake. You make so a lot of people ask me this question actually, that don't you get tempted to take all these risks and everything else? I have, and some of them haven't worked. And so actually, I've gone back to the drawing board.
With a multi-million. I got this one. Let me get this table now.
But look, it's not even about spending money as such, but it's about the level of risk that some of these people are able to take, right? You have to understand and gauge your personal appetite for risk, right? Because what you can comfortably afford to lose, I might not be able to.
Of course.
Right? But the moment you kind of blur those lines and think, that worked for him, and therefore I'm going to try it out without really making a firm assessment of myself, is when you run into troubles. That's when you run into trouble. So I think you definitely have to understand that whole thing by association, that of course understand the world around you.
Yeah.
But when you're making these sort of life-changing decisions, don't take long-term decisions based on a very temporary emotion. This
Do you feel like you ever have to more rein your clients in, or give them, or push them to make more risk?
I rein them in. The reality is, look, I absolutely love entrepreneurs, and for anybody listening who's an entrepreneur, I have so much respect for you, right? Because I have clients who sacrifice families, sacrifice the growing up of their children to make the business a success, right? And they would do whatever they would for the family, but sometimes the business takes precedence. I do have to rein them in, because for entrepreneurs, as far as they're concerned, everything's going to be okay. I'm the banker. I'm afraid I can't agree with that. Right? I have to put the common sense hat on and say, well, actually, let's look at this in its entirety. Every entrepreneur says, that's fine. Lend me X amount of money. I'll pay you back somehow. Something or here or there will go through. But it's up to me to actually bring them back a few pegs and say, well, hang on a second. Let's assess this. Let's talk this through. So absolutely.
Entrepreneur, that word gets thrown around very easily.
It does.
People start a t-shirt business and that's it.
In our world. From your perspective, what is an entrepreneur?
Do you know what? I often ask my clients that question, and I say, do you call yourself an entrepreneur? And I always get a mixed response. Not everybody agrees that they're an entrepreneur. Some people just assume that I'm a business person, or I run this or I run that, and I'm not an entrepreneur. I think really an entrepreneur is something that you impose upon yourself, that actually you're somebody who's always looking out for the next thing, or you've got a real purpose to make a difference to the economy or the world by bringing something to the table. As you said, some people will make one t-shirt and call themselves an entrepreneur. And actually in social media, if you go on my page now, there's no title. There's too many titles. All the good titles are taken. And sometimes actually it's about the substance, right? Forget the title. I mean, look, the person that needs to know your title will know your title, right? If they don't need to know your title, then it's anyone's guess. But I think entrepreneurism really is about the blood, the sweat, the tears. It's about the nights when everybody else is asleep but you're awake. It's about when you hit rock bottom and then you come up with your best idea. It's about not following the crowd. Right? Entrepreneurism is about failing and failing fast, and then starting again and going. It's a state of mind. I think so. It's very difficult to try and put someone in a box to say you're an entrepreneur. I mean, some people, as I said, it has to be self-imposed. Some people are very happy to be called that. Some people just say, I don't feel comfortable with that word, because there is a connotation that entrepreneurs are kind of rough around the edges and kind of a bit, very not serious about life, and they need to get a proper job. But actually, in reality, entrepreneurs are controlling the economy now, and everything you look around you is done by.
And take really big risks.
Big
risks.
Calculated ones.
Which you and I or the normal person may not. And I think that's why we have to give them the respect.
What would you say is are good strategies in this day and age for investment? For somebody who has a little bit of disposable money that they want to invest in things, how would you advise them to go about looking at investing their money?
So I think you need a goal, right? If you talk to any wealth manager or financial advisor, nobody can ever present you with a solution without knowing your goal, right? It just doesn't happen. It doesn't make sense. I can't tell you how to make the best of your money unless I know what you're trying to achieve. So, you mentioned the word inflation earlier on. So inflation at the moment, 2.5%. If you have cash sat under your mattress in a year's time, that £100 is probably worth 95 or whatever, right? So scared money doesn't make any money. You have to do something with your money. If you leave it sat there, the real purchasing power of your money will fall. Okay. But you need a goal. So if you've got disposable income, what is it you're trying to achieve? A lot of people associate goals with immediate things such as, I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house, or I've got a wedding coming up and I need to save. You need to have a goal in mind. And then once you know what the goal is, you work backwards and say, right, what's my timeline? Right? Have I got 5 years to play with? Have I got 10 years to play with? Well, actually, no, I've got a year to play with. The timeline and the time horizon also determines then what type of investment you go for. Right? If you're looking at stocks and shares, normally they advise that that's a bit more of a long-term game. You want to be in it, because the reality is it'll go up and down or fluctuate, right? But actually you might be able to find, and this is where I think our urban community can be very savvy. Think about all these items of, exclusive things that come out here and there that people buy or resell for crazy amounts of money, etc. There's so many things that people can actually do in that space. People buy watches now as investments, right? Because
definitely.
watches, some, not all watches, you have to know which ones you're buying, but some watches do hold their value at minimum.
Of course.
All appreciate, right? So, but again, why are you buying a watch as an investment? What's your time frame? What's your goal? You know, if you're trying to grow your money by 20-30%, maybe a Patek might work for you. Maybe a Rolex. I don't know. It just depends where you're trying to get to. Yeah. Right. It depends where you're trying to get to. Then you really work backwards and say, right, what kind of investment can I get myself into? Do I partner up with a friend and invest in a buy-to-let property where we let it out? Or do we go buy a house, renovate it, sell it? Right? Or do I go buy this product and sell it myself? Or do I put it in stocks and shares? Yeah. You know, do you guys have ISAs?
I got an ISA.
You've got an ISA.
Yeah.
Tax-free savings, why not? You know, look into stuff like that. It's simple. Why wouldn't you want tax-free savings? Pensions. How many people have pensions?
I don't have a pension.
Do you have a pension?
The maddest thing.
I'm waiting. Nah.
I
want to. The problem is I don't have an employer.
We need to have that conversation. That's a conversation.
So it is. Yeah, I know.
We need to have that conversation.
I'm this close.
It's so key.
As self-employed, right?
Yeah.
When this all stops, when the music stops, as they say,
it's done.
Then what?
Then what?
I just have to.
Do you know what some of my good friends have done though?
The mill there.
Huh?
That's what, I just have to hope I got a mill.
I'm telling you, but you got to make sure that under the bed you got some peace. But do you know what? This is more from my curiosity and having conversations with people. Yeah, what I started to realize is, especially in like what some got some friends doing. Like now, do you know what I think? I've realized that like I gotta just have a random shout out to my closest friends at the moment. Yeah, because we all come from a certain place and we've all done certain things. Yeah, but like, how they're moving now and their mentality today just makes me, it reassures me that I'm moving in the right circle. Do you get what I'm saying? Like their mentality is so inspiring to me. It's incredible. But I know that like for some of them, what a couple of them are doing, because some of them are self-employed, some couple run businesses or whatever, but their thing is, all right, boom, I don't know whether they've got pensions or not. Well, actually a couple I know has got pensions, but their thing is, what I've done is I've got a house, but I'm buying this other house, or they've bought another place, renting it out or whatever, and their plan is, for example, one in particular, okay, within 12 years I'm overpaying on my mortgage, so within 12 years that's done, right? Now I can keep renting it out, I still make certain amount of money of that every month or whatnot. I can maybe buy another one, but this is what happens once everything's all said and done. I'll just sell that yard there, so then I've got my pension, or I've got a little savings there that I've already got. But one thing that I do know is once I sell this house, at least I know I got 2, 3, maybe 400 grand that's there that I can just live on. And that is, do you know how I've realised how important that is? Is because on a daily basis, I've said this a few times, my great grandmother's still living and my granddad's still living. And I look at my great grandmother here and I realise that's success. You have smashed it. You're 100 years old, but you have being able to save and have a certain amount of things within your period of time in your life where you were working, so that now all of these years that you haven't been able to work, you're nice.
You survived.
You can pay for this. You can still pay. She's got more than enough money in her account to just live. Ideally for her, she's 100 years old, so she's at a stage now where she's kind of like, you know what, God, take me now, man, I'm ready. But at the end of the day, she's comfortable. She's in her own home. Do you get what? She's able to pay for this, able to pay for that. She ain't sweating about nothing. And I think, now, because so much people are not particularly thinking about that, there's going to be a generation of people, in their 70s, 80s and 90s. Fuck! Do you know what? It will be interesting to see what homelessness is going to be like.
If anyone takes anything away from this conversation, check your credit score. Do not take pension and retirement for granted. You know, at what age do you start? It's never too early, right? Because there will be a point whereby that income isn't as strong as it used to be. You still got bills you need to pay. You've probably got children. Look at the reality of it now. The average age of someone buying their own house is creeping up and up and up and up each year. You're going to have children who need your support in their mid-30s, their own 40s, that you still have to be the bank of mum and dad for, right? So if you've got no savings or investments or pensions of your own, how are you going to survive? Of course. Right? For me, that and life insurance or life cover go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Because there's too many people who, and again, it's perhaps the thing about being naive, just don't know about it. Right? Just don't know that if you're a young guy or girl, you could be paying £6 a month for, you know, a couple £100,000 of cover if you've got good health and you don't smoke, etc. And in the event of the unforeseen, and we don't know when that's going to be, you get a nice lump sum that will at least cover, you know, your immediate family or whatever else. Lots of people don't have life cover. Why don't they have life cover?
A lot of people don't know. Literally, a lot of people just don't know. And I know it sounds really naive, but you just, you know, I think it kind of goes back to the conversation that we were having before. Okay, yeah, we know that some schools should be talking about these type of things, but you take that away from it, and some parents just like
don't know.
They just don't know, or they just haven't had the conversation. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's why I always try to push people to be curious. You know what I mean? And ask questions, especially when it comes to money and that, because
I think also as black people, our parents would have got here not too long ago, or our parents' would have got here not too long ago. And I think we will be the first generation that really, really pushes as a whole to own stuff and to pass financial like wisdom onto our kids.
See, I disagree with that. I think actually the generation before us had the better opportunities for ownership. A lot of us now are dwindling it away.
Oh no, they definitely had the better
a lot of us now are dwindling it away.
Why do you say that?
Because I think of this haste to chase something without knowing what the hell it is you're chasing. I think at the moment now people earn money, and that money isn't enough until they have no money. I think a lot of people are running headlessly towards this goal and forgetting all the steps it takes to get there, and so they never get there. I think, you know, there's a lot of distractions at the moment, and people
do you think our generation is more well informed though?
Oh, correct. Access-wise, you know, as I was saying about entrepreneurship, there's never been a better time to be self-employed if you've got an opportunity or a talent or a product that will sell. Absolutely. Every resource is available. Problem is, where are people's minds at? That's the key. You know, so for me, that's the biggest frustration, that I sit here and I've come from here and I'm thinking, how do I attract the two? How do I combine it? You know, so we should be the generation of owners and you know, making real leaps and bounds in terms of progress. But I'm just very concerned that we're too easily distracted, and the generation after us
might be even worse.
I mean,
the thing is, something has to give soon. With our generation as a whole, and with, to be honest, with the whole financial institution as a whole. I mean, we are on like thin ice at the moment as a whole, and do you think? What do you think happens in the next 2 years? Do we see another 2008?
I think at the moment, Brexit and everything that's going on, I probably wouldn't bore your listeners with Brexit, but you know, it's a reality that we're all going to have to face one way or the other. That's going to dictate a lot of, you know, how we operate in you know, in this country.
And we won't really know until it actually really kicks in.
I think there's so much uncertainty around it. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. And not to kind of unsettle anybody, but that's why for me it's so important that you do all self-reflect and think, am I good?
Exactly.
Am I good?
For real.
Right? We might be okay, but am I good? And it's not about selfish needs or whatever, but like I said, there are no filters on the bank balance. Am I okay? Am I good? That, you know, I'm stable, I'm comfortable, that I'm not struggling. That's really where we need to start our soul search, you know?
And it's probably a really good time to have a look at it, because who knows what will happen in 2 years, or because it's looking like there has to almost be an explosion. It's a weird one, but as in, it has all the familiar symptoms of a 2008.
I think, look, you've just got to think about Wonga.com went bankrupt, or they went into administration. Right? Wonga.com a few years ago were everywhere. You couldn't avoid them, right? And they were there effectively the saviors of the people who needed urgent money, you know, bad credit score, etc. Even these guys can go out of business, right? So the reality is, you know, there is no permanent guarantee for whether you're employed, whether you're self-employed, you know, whatever your field of work, there is no self-guarantee. You have to ask yourself that honest question. Am I good? You know, when I see a lot of entrepreneurs, or, you know, as you said, these t-shirt sellers or whatever, and I always ask, how's your business doing? Business doing really good. Yeah, business is good. And I'm like, no. How are you really doing? Don't give me that, you know, plastic, that generic answer of everything's great. How's business really doing? How's your turnover? How's your profit? How's your cost? Well, actually, I haven't sold anything in a few months, but a business can't be great, can it? You know, so you have to really take a step back and ask yourself, am I good?
What are some of the practical ways to manage your money, would you say?
First of all, have absolute visibility of your money, right? Know where your money is at all times. There's no good, I know some people who have this very historic view that you throw the money away here, forget about it, and, okay, yes, have some money in places that's not instant access if you want, so that you're not tempted to touch it. But you need clarity. You need to be able to have this sheet line in the middle. Where are all your eggs, right? You don't put them all in one basket, but you need to know how to locate them. Where do I find all my money? So, how to manage your money. First of all, know what your outgoings are, right? Self a budget. If you get paid £1,000 a month, let's say, know how much of that is going out in committed expenditure. Know how much of that is going out in discretionary expenditure, i.e. things that you could do without, but all the bars and the clubs and stuff like that. And then know how much you're going to put aside for a rainy day. It's got to be that divide as a bare minimum. As a bare minimum. Some people say at least 20% of your income needs to be put aside every month. But again, that can't be for everybody. It depends on what your circumstances are. Right? Have clarity, have visibility of where your money is. Know what your outgoings are. And before you commit to something, always work out what that's going to mean to you. Before you take out car finance or whatever, for example, work that into your numbers and say, right, if I now go take this car, it's going to cost me £300 a month. Now my net disposable income is going to fall by that, meaning that my rainy day fund might be affected. You have to work these things out. It's not by accident. You have to work it out. Don't do it and then retrospect and think, oh, once you sign that contract, you sign that contract. You have to be able to work these things out before you actually commit into these decisions. And don't be led, don't corner yourself into things. In your case, get rid of those parking tickets. Just get rid of them. I got one the other day.
Anything in the last 2 years I paid.
All right,
everything's cool. I'm all man from everything I get in the last. Since I realised, but these are old school ones.
Yeah, my parking tickets don't get mad now. Like I pay them.
But I think there's probably
in the past they got mad.
Yeah,
they got mad.
£543.
What?
One ticket was £65.
When did you get the first bailiff? Like how? When was that? Like, do you remember that?
What do you mean? Do I remember it? The bread left with my car.
Oh my god! Listen.
Yeah, I can't forget that.
I'll tell you mine. Yeah, I remember one time I just first was whipping, so I didn't even have my car for that long, but I kept getting. This is what actually happened. Yeah, so I was DJing, I was getting a lot of bookings at this point, whatever. And in Christmas time, around that time, it's always a proper busy time for me.
Yeah.
So there was one particular day where I had a bunch of bookings in one day, and I just kept itching my car up because I was running late. Yeah, I think one booking, the DJ was late, so then that makes me late for pretty much everything else. Yeah, so anyway, I got there, itched my car up, got a ticket, whatever. Came out, realised I got a ticket, minor. Went to the next booking, I was running late, itched my car up, did the booking, come outside, I got another ticket. So I had 2 tickets in one night, yeah. So anyway, in my mind, I'm like, you know what, boom, don't worry, I'm going to pay that, it's minor, yeah. I've made dough, I'm good. So anyway, me not being responsible, forgot. Then, the letter comes through, oh yeah, shit, I'm going to pay it. Then the next one comes through, yeah, shit, I'm going to pay it. But what ended up happening was, my mind then started to come accustomed to the fact that it's one ticket. So all the letters are for one ticket. So when I'm getting these letters, I'm like, blouse and skirt, man, I need to... All right, cool. Do you know what? In the end, I got one red letter, yeah, and I was like, all right, I need to just pay it because this is just getting ridiculous. It was like 200 and something pounds. Yeah. Or maybe 300 or something. So I paid it, right? But I remember I paid it on a Sunday. So the Monday come, I got a next letter. I said, hold on a minute, I just paid it. But then I thought, oh no, maybe what happened was, it was already in the system to come and, you get what I'm saying? So I'm like, don't worry, they'll know that I've paid it and whatever. So then, maybe about a month and a bit later, I got another one. And stupid me, instead of me ringing them to say, look, I've already paid it, or find out what the misunderstanding was, I said, what did it? They must have known that I've paid it. This has got to be a mistake. So I just left it. Yeah. Anyway, sleeping now. My mum's husband, he always wakes up mad early. He's an electrician. He's always up at like 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever. So he's come in my room and he's like, "Yo, there's a clamp on your car, you know." Then he's just gone out and gone downstairs and had his breakfast. But then like I've like opened my eyes a little bit, and I'm thinking, this is just part of the dream. So I've just gone back to sleep. But then I've kind of woken up and I'm like, nah, he actually really just came in my room and told me that there's a clamp on my car. So I've got up and I've looked outside, I see the clamp on my car. I'm like, nah, this is mad. So I've gone downstairs, I've just took the letter, and I've just looked at the bottom. I didn't even read the top bit. And it said £890.
That's
I
nice.
said,
That's
what?
nice. That's good.
All right, yeah, you can get to yours in a bit.
Yours is the car.
So I said, what? Nah, it's a mistake. Obviously, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
So obviously, I've rang them and I'm like, nah, I've paid it, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm arguing with this guy. We're not arguing. I'm having a calm conversation with him. Because in my heart, I know I've paid it.
Yeah.
But then as he's talking to me about it, I've realised, it was the other one. Bruv, £890. I spent the day in bed after that.
The day's done.
Yeah,
Day's
it was
done.
horrible.
Whatever you had planned is done.
Did you know what the thing is? I'm not even going to lie to you. When the man come to the yard to come and collect the peas, all types of things was going through my mind, bro.
And that's £800 net.
I was thinking, do you know what I could do? Dig a hole in the back garden quickly. Because I thought, if I dig a hole in the garden now and try and convince my mum's husband to be in on this thing.
And just wig him?
Yeah. I thought, you know what, we'll just cover it. But then I thought, nah, it's just going to get worse.
Wow.
This is going to get worse.
A load of mine accumulated and one company called Marston picked it up.
Yeah.
Ended up coming for me or whatever. He's knocked to my door. He said, yeah, man's clamped your car, still yo 2 bags. I'm like,
what?
Like, 2
2 bags?
The thing is, I knew this day would come. Obviously, because I've just been running from this day. Of course it's going to come one day. So anyway, the bro says 2 bags. If you don't pay now, I'm going to call the thing to take the whip. I said, oh yeah? All right, cool, 1 sec. And I went and sat on my whip. I said, take the whip.
Oh, you ain't got to take it with you in it.
So all now Jakes have come. He's called Jakes. It's now a mad matter, yeah?
But they trying to
Jakes are knocking on the window. I've cracked the window tiny. I'm like, listen, you man, I don't think you're getting it. You're going to have to take me out the whip. If you want this, you're going to have to, put it this way, big man. I am not coming out this whip. So the trucks will come. The truck's thinking, what's going on? I'm like, bro, you man ain't getting it. I'm not going anywhere. So he said, I then made up a little plan with the guy, who realised obviously this bre's not going nowhere. I said, bro, I'll stay here till tomorrow. I said, I'm outside my house, so I'll have people bring me food. Can you stay? And then he said, all right, cool, I'll come back for it tomorrow. We'll work out a payment plan or whatever it is. You can pay a bag today, a bag next week or whatever it is. In my head, I'm thinking, nah. As soon as he left, Angle grinded off the clamp.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So that's now another charge.
Oh,
criminal damage, yeah.
That's criminal damage. You can't just do that.
I couldn't care about this stuff at the time. I couldn't care. I parked way far away from my house. The guy found the car.
No.
That's it.
That happened to me as well. That happened to me as well. I think they got sensors in that, don't they?
Bro, he took it to one place in Chelmsford.
No.
I had to go in some mad. I tried to let my car back again, but 2,400.
Oh, that's not too... 2,400?
Yeah.
Jesus crispy.
Anyway, man, do you know what? This stuff happened. I needed that to make me learn, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's true.
Responsibility, I think this is what it goes back to.
For sure. And don't wait 7 years.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That fairy tale is definitely false.
The thing is, I'm still going to wait just to see who comes for me now because I'm in my 7th year.
I can't condone this.
You see when you're so close, to pay it now, it just seems like, no, I can't do it now.
I predict that they will be even more aggressive. Let's just say if what you were saying was the truth.
If they come for me now, I'm okay.
If you implement that into, think about it. If I was running a business and I knew that within 7 years it's going to be a write-off, in that 7th year, I'm going to be on your ass.
Yeah.
Seriously, because I'm going to want the piece. Otherwise, I know that it's gone.
The problem why I was burying my head in the sand before is I don't have $2,000 to give you.
Yeah, I hear that.
I also don't have £800.
But you can, just for people, so people know, you can, if you go back to, this is just about advice.
Yeah.
You go back to the courts and you just tell them, look, I can't.
Yeah.
This is what I can.
There's
do.
loads of stages.
There's loads of different ways. You just have to get advice. But do you know what? I just think the moral of the story is there's no filters on your bank balance, man.
Quick question, actually. I know it's a bit of a taboo for bankers in the financial district, but blockchain.
What is that?
You tell me. Do you think it has a place in the future?
What is blockchain? Is that like some cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so it's linked. The blockchain is the technology behind it. Cryptocurrency is the actual tradable element of it. Do I think it's got a future? Blockchain, more so, yes. Yeah. Because that's the technology that will ultimately control and manipulate various things that it sits behind. It's cryptocurrency is the bit that is a lot more high risk. Yeah. So most investment houses wouldn't really advise on the average Joe putting all their life savings into cryptocurrency. We all saw what happened at Christmas. If you came across it, it just plummeted. And the problem with that is it's not centrally backed by any government or any bank, and so it could go from here down to the bottom without anyone stopping it, right? Because it could just disappear. Yeah. Saying that, there are people who've made millions out of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, of course.
Because wherever something new arises, there's always the entrepreneurs or the people, entrepreneurs, I use that word. Yeah. There are the people who would take advantage of a situation and actually find something good in it. So I know lots of people, even my the guy at my local Sainsbury's, I always talk to every time I go in there. And I remember him saying, tell me about this cryptocurrency, should I do it? And I said to him, be very, very cautious on what you put in it. Yeah. And he was like, okay. So I sent him some links. I can help where I can in terms of information. And here you go, read it and take your own advice. And then I saw him not too long ago and I said, how's cryptocurrency? He was like, oh, don't talk to me about cryptocurrency. It's been a bad year. Don't talk to me about cryptocurrency. So yeah, I think you just really, as I said, it all goes back with any investment. Sometimes you have to be able to understand what your appetite for risk is. Yeah. And if you can't comfortably afford to lose what you're putting in there, then do really consider if it's the right place for you. Because there are so many other safer investments that you could put your money into. No doubt. There's always just the hype about anything that's new. Right? So I would say definitely do your research before you gamble that.
Just lastly though, man, just on a personal one, bruv, like how are you? Are you as a person, are you happy?
I think I'm always working on me, if I'm honest with you. From a very young age, I've always had these very big ambitions. I said to my mum when I was a very young boy that one day I'll tell my story. And I think I'm writing the chapters as I go along. I don't know what the story is, but I've promised the story from a very young age. And so I think every encounter that I come across isn't coincidental. I think there's always a purpose to the people I meet, the places I go. And I think being put in this position of influence, I think there's definitely a purpose for it, which is why I can't sit on my hands and kind of watch from afar. But I think I'm content in terms of what I've achieved thus far. I think I've got so much more to go in terms of the impact I have on the society around me. I'm shortly about to sit on the governing board for two of the colleges in Northwest London, just to kind of give some input, to oversee some of the things. There's lots of ongoing projects with people. I'm a workaholic, right? And I'm not one of those people that I'm just busy for the sake of it, but I'm busy getting things done. Right? And so part of the whole disappearing from social media for 2.5 years was just to get things done.
Just to do that,
right? Just to get things done. But yeah, so I think the question about happiness, I think it's definitely not a destination, but it's a journey.
Of course.
Right? And some people might assume that I don't have any issues or problems or whatever, but of course we all do. I have some very tough days in the office, where things aren't going your way, and they might not be going your way for a month. But you grind it out and you make it through. But obviously, people don't post their difficulties or failures. Of course, right? It's only when the champagnes come out, and maybe sometimes that doesn't help those who are actually looking out for inspiration. Since I've been back on Instagram, I've been genuinely humbled by people who've DM'd me and said, I used to look for your messages in the morning and, it used to get me through the day or whatever. And as passive as they may seem to somebody somewhere is actually reading it in a quiet room and taking a lot from it.
From it, of course.
So I'll definitely say that message to, to people out there that, whatever gift or talent you have, there's probably somebody who can benefit from it.
No doubt.
You may not be popular. Look, banking, as you said, bankers, whatever. We're not popular. I can't make money sound sexy unless I'm throwing it all out, right? I can't make it sexy unless I'm, flashing here and there, whatever. It's very difficult to try and capture a large audience to talk about pensions. Who else talk about that? Right? Who else talk about that? But I know what's good for you in that financial sense. But trying to engage people's brains and get them to a place where they equally understand, that's the challenge, and I enjoy that challenge. So, in answer to your question, I think I'm very content and I've got a long way to go.
Sick, man. Do you know what? I appreciate your time for coming in and sitting and having a conversation with us. I know that there will be a lot of things that, some people can take from, and even me so as well.
Yeah.
And, sometimes obviously we come here, we crack joke, we do all of that, but I think there are certain things that is good to have the conversation about and to delve deeper with, because although for some people, some people might feel like, oh yeah, I know a lot of this stuff, but you'd be surprised that a lot of people that don't, and even me, I said a few times, there's like a lot of things that later on in my life I started to understand a bit. But if I could help somebody even later on in their life, or even like earlier on in their life, that makes me feel good. And yeah, man, I just again want to just say thanks for your time, man.
No worries.
But yeah, you know what? The moral of the story today is, there's no filter on your bank balance, my G. It's when you go home and you switch everything off. Everything off. It's just you and those numbers. It's just you and those numbers. But yeah, my bro,
appreciate
thanks
it.
for that.
Thanks
man.
for having me.
Yeah, and I'm sure at some stage again we'll go for a different direction and have another conversation.
Absolutely.
But man, thanks a lot for coming.
Appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Bro.